Well, hey there everyone. So this week we're going to do something a little bit different. So I am going to be crocheting, but as you may have seen in the thumbnail, I'm going to attempt to crochet a full suit of armor. I just love the idea that you can do absolutely anything you want with crochet, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my free will and I'm going to make some armor. So let me show you what I got here. So I did go to Michael's last night and I picked up a bunch of gray yarn. So these are going to be my base colors. The middle one I already owned and it is a different tone than the original gray. But I figured I could use it for a different part of the armor and it would work out. And then I bought these two for some accent pieces, along the edges and just details and whatnot. And then finally I bought these two a little bit more shiny ones for chainmail. So let me give you the breakdown of this design that I have worked out. So as I said, I am going to be doing a full set of armor. So that means I'm going to have head to toe crochet. So I am going to be doing a chest plate and it's going to have 3 separate layers on it to kind of make it look like it has layers and is movable like some other pieces of armor that I've seen. And then right below the chest plate I'm putting 2 tassets on both the front and the back, and that's going to be another just little layered piece. Now for all of these pieces it's likely going to be double crochet just because it's the quickest, because I have a lot of pieces to get through. So the front is going to have a little bit of an intricate design and then the back is going to be a bit more plain but the same structural design as the front. And then I'm probably just going to put little straps to connect it at the sides, so it'll go on over my head and then connect at the sides, kind of like real armor would connect. Now for the chainmail, so this is going to be a specific stitch. It's a bit of a looser stitch to make it look like chainmail, and I was thinking of doing the full shirt, but unfortunately I do not have a ton of this yarn and it was $6 per yarn, so I didn't want to get a ton. So I am just going to do a little almost skirt piece that's going to have a little point at the end. So this is what it's going to look like underneath the chest plate and the tassets. And now for the shoulder pieces, I believe they're called pauldrons. I'm not quite sure on the pronunciation, but these are going to be little shoulder pieces that are going to connect to the front and back of my chest piece. So for that I'm planning on doing 2 almost triangular pieces, and I'm going to layer them again, and hopefully when I put them on my shoulder they'll stick out like they're supposed to. And now for the bracers. So the bracers are only going to be on my forearm here, and I'm going to put a little loop where it can connect to the finger so that it just kind of sits better. That means it's going to have a point at the front of my hand, and then I'm also going to put a little square diamond piece at the elbow to give it some definition, and then the underside of it is going to be corseted so that it fits properly on my hand. And then finally the leg pieces, so I am only going to do it to my knee, not the full thigh, and I believe these are called the greaves, which is the shin piece, and then the sabatons, which is the foot or shoe piece. So the shin piece is going to wrap all the way around my leg, and then I'm going to have a little diamond much like the bracers and have that on my knee. And then I'm going to have a part that goes over my shoe that kind of looks like an armored shoe piece. Obviously it's yarn, and I'm gonna have some just definition on it to make it look like it's layered, but I'm probably just gonna do some top crochet on it. So altogether this is what the piece should look like, and I'm probably just going to layer a black long sleeve and black leggings underneath it to make it look like armor. Okay, now that we have the whole design out of the way, it is about time to start crocheting. So I am going to be taking about 2 weeks on this, so I'm going to do this in the background while doing another shorter video, which would have been last week's video. So I am taking a little bit longer than a week because I do not think I can accomplish this in just 1 week. So I think I'm going to start with the chest piece, and hopefully I'll be able to figure this out because it seems like some parts are going to be quite complicated, but again, I think you can do anything in crochet, so we're going to try and do that. So again, for the structure of the top, I want it to be a bit more fitting, so I'm probably going to do it pretty much, it's actually, now that I'm looking at it, kind of like the same shape of this top here. So it is going to be a tighter neckline, and then, go around the arms, and then they are going to be in 2 halves like I said. So I'll do the first layer and then 2 underneath layers that I'm just probably going to sew on underneath to give it some definition, and then add in some details and stuff later. So let's go ahead and start this and hope that I can actually do it. So as I said, this whole thing is going to be in double crochet because it is just the most time efficient for this project. So for the top here, I'm starting bottom up because I found that was kind of the best way to do the point at the bottom. So I'm basically just doing a bunch of increases to create this angle here, and then I will work up from there. And then while I was filming, I ended up getting a massive haboob where I live. Now, if you don't know what a haboob is, it is just a massive dust storm. And this is literally right outside of my house. You can see like how fast the storm's coming. This is probably within the span of like 5 or 10 minutes and the storm hit us. So that was pretty cool to watch. We haven't had a good haboob in a couple years. Also, safety note, I should not have gone outside because you can get valley fever from going into a dust storm. So I was only outside for about like 5 seconds when the storm hit, so don't do what I did. Stay inside, please. Anyways, back to crocheting. Now for the underneath layer, it's going to be the same exact thing that I did for the top portion, except cut in half because I obviously don't need the armhole portions and everything. Now before I sew anything on, I'm going to do a layer of top crochet around all of the edges of this just to make it look a bit more defined. And then once I've done that, I can go ahead and sew the bottom layer onto the back of this front piece, but I'm only going to catch some like very stray little pieces of yarn so that the sewing doesn't show on the front. I also added some top crochet design of some swirls on the top and bottom. Alright, it is day 2 and let's see what we've got so far. So I have created the front armor panel with the one layer down here. So just because of like my torso size, I had drawn out 3 little like pieces down here, but I only needed the 2 layers because it was long enough with just that. So I think this is looking really good so far. I added some detail around like the edges to make it look a bit more defined, and then some detail at the top and bottom here as like etching in the armor, I guess. Also, if this outfit looks familiar, it's because I'm filming it the same day as last week's video, so that's why I'm wearing the same outfit in this video. So I think I've got a pretty good pattern worked out with this, so I think what I want to figure out now is the tassets, because I was looking at some like images and I'm not sure if I should have it like 4 tassets, so 2 on each side of the front and back, or just like 1 on each side that reaches from the front to the back. So I'm going to do a little working out with that. So today at the very least I want to get the tassets done, and then later we can work on the back pieces of this. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Now to work on the tassets, so they are going to look very similar to the drawing that I had done. So it is just going to be 2 little layers of like little rectangles, except I am going to add little increases so that it flares out just a little bit. And then once I get the 2 layers, I'm going to sew it on the same way that I did the top, to where I'm just going to grab very small back pieces of yarn to make sure that the sewing does not show on the front. And then once I've sewn those together, then I can finally sew it on to the back of this layer of the top. And then I go ahead and do the other one, and we have the top pretty much done for the front. Okay, so I got the entire front done, and it looks so cool. So now I have figured out what I'm doing, and I'm going to do the back, except I'm going to do the back a little bit different, because when I did the points here at the bottom, I kind of did them a little sketchily, and they kind of like bubble, which is fine for the front because it kind of forms to like my chest and everything, but for my back it's flat. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do one piece for the back, so no like layered part here, but I am going to make it like the same length so that the sides can match up, and just do it flat with no point at all. And then for the neckline, I realized I made it quite tight, so if I were to make the same exact neckline and sew it to the arms, I would not be able to get this over my head. So I think what I'm going to do is I am going to probably make it about the same neckline, but I'm going to make the shoulder pieces detachable. So basically I'm going to make them so that they can like button onto each of them. So the back straps here are probably going to be a little bit longer so that they can overlap and button onto this piece. That just makes it a lot easier. And then for the connection at the side, I'm probably just going to, from here to here, corset it at the back, just like do a long chain in the gray and then just like weave it in and out, and that'll just give me exactly, you know, the tightness that I need from this. Now the tassets worked out fantastically, so I'm going to likely do the same thing on the back, though I might need to adjust it a bit just because now it's going to be a flat back and not in an angle, so I might have to adjust the pattern a tiny bit, but overall this is going fantastically. So I'm gonna go ahead and start chugging away on the back. Now to work on the back, so I did decide for the back that I'm just going to have it be pretty straight and not have that point at the bottom, just because when I kind of tried it on the back, that point kind of bubbled out and it looked a little weird. But the back is going to get the same tassets as the front. And again, it is going to get that top crochet on the outer edges of this just to make it look nice. So every single piece that I do is going to get this like edge of top crochet. Okay, so I decided to do the back tassets the same as the front. So I ended up placing this one all the way to the edge, and then when I put the whole like thing on, it was so far to the side because like stretching and stuff, and so it left like just this middle portion very empty. So I decided to make a little guy here as like a little butt cover and I think that looks really good. So now I just have to put the borders around all of these and then sew them on, and we are almost done with just the chest piece. And here the whole chest and back piece is put together, and it's looking really good. Okay, so now that I have the full chest and back piece done, it is time to work on the shoulder piece. So I was originally planning on doing just a little shoulder piece that would like cover this part, but I think I kind of want to extend it to cover my shoulder here and then maybe wrap around the top of my arm here to give me a little bit more armor. And I also want to try and make it to where I can cover these buttons up. So we're going to try and work that out. Also, I did end up ordering little brass buttons to go on just like specific detail areas like here, here, here. You know, places where armor would generally need like a little like bolt or whatever to connect it. So those are coming in soon, and then I can just sew those on to specific places. So I'm thinking for design, I do like the like layered look in armor. So I think I'll have like one piece here and then maybe have another piece underneath it and maybe another piece underneath that to give it kind of like layers. I'm gonna mess around with some patterns and see how that goes. But overall, I just want to try and cover up these buttons just because this is sticking out a bit weird. So I would just rather cover it with stuff. So let me screw around with some stuff and see if I can figure this out. Now here's what I did with the little pauldron pieces. So it's not going to be sticking out as I had said in my little drawing. And I'm going to kind of layer them like this. Now in that video you saw that I had a different colored yarn. That's because I had run out of the lighter yarn. So I was playing with the idea of doing it in the darker color, but then inevitably decided to go back to the store and get that same lighter color so that everything was uniform. And then once those were done, again, I could just sew that bottom layer underneath that top layer. And then I just put a little strap around that bottom layer so that it could stay in place. And then finally I could tack on the shoulder pieces onto the whole chest piece. Now for the lower arm, I did just a pretty simple design on this. So I do have the little finger loop that connects to my finger and then it has a little point at the front of my hand. But I did not end up doing a little elbow point piece just because the way that this arm piece was positioned, it would not have ended up on my elbow. So after I did the top crocheting on the outer edges of this again, I did just corset it and put it onto my arm. And here are the arm pieces. The ensemble is slowly coming together. Okay, so yesterday I got the arm pieces done here. I wanted to add a little bit more decoration to them, but I tried and it didn't really work, so I got just kind of stuck with this. So for now, this is what they're gonna look like. And then I also got these shoulder pieces put on to the main body piece. So this is coming along swell. Now, over the weekend, I also got these brass little buttons in, so I'm gonna put those in various places around the like suit of armor to make it look like the little bolts that hold things together and whatnot. So I think that's gonna really help the look a lot. So today I think I'm going to transition from working on armor pieces and work on the chainmail. So again, I bought these kind of like shimmery gray pieces that I'm going to do the chainmail out of. So I think for the chainmail it's going to be really, really simple. So I think I'm just going to do like a triangle in the front and a triangle in the back, and then have like the sides just be open, just because I feel like there's a lot going on my lower half and I don't want to add to like the thickness of it. Plus I don't have like a crazy amount of this yarn, so I am just going to do probably just some triangles and connect it at the hip with a string. So today I need to put on the buttons on these places on the armor and then finish the chainmail. And then tomorrow I believe our last piece is just the little like calf and shoe covers, and then we're done after 2 weeks of work. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Now again, I got these little brass buttons in, and I'm just going to sew them into various places on this top, and I think it makes the whole thing look really good. Now for the chainmail, I think it's called a 4-chain mesh stitch. And I'm basically just going to make it a pretty long point going at the front, and then do the same thing for the back. And again, this is in that kind of shinier yarn to make it kind of look like chainmail. And then once both halves of the chainmail were done, I could sew it together down the side. And then I did just do like a very long chain to weave in and out of the top to kind of cinch it to myself because it was a little too big. Okay, with the chainmail piece done, the last thing that we have to do is the little shin and shoe pieces, which will be tomorrow's problem. So hopefully tomorrow will be the last day of crocheting the suit of armor. So I will see you all tomorrow. Alright, so yesterday I got the chainmail skirt piece done. So now the last thing that we have to do is the little boot pieces. So for the yarn, I wanted to use the same yarn that I was using for the rest of this. However, when I went to go pick some more up, they only had one, and I've already used a portion of this for the arm pieces and stuff. So I had to pick up just like a similar-ish color of yarn. It's the best I could do. So these are going to be used for the foot pieces, and hopefully it'll work. So for the like shin and foot piece, I basically want it to cover the entire like knee down to the foot. So like I showed in the photo, it's going to cover just like the top of the shoe, and then kind of like have a little design to make it look like layers. And then the knee, I'm probably going to put like a little granny square to make it look like a little knee guard. And most importantly, I think I want all of this to fit over my boot that I'm going to wear with it. So we're going to go ahead and try this, and hopefully I'm most worried about the like foot part, and hopefully that works. So let's go ahead and get started. And then finally onto the last portion, which were the leg and shoe pieces. So the like shin piece was pretty simple. I just did some decreasing so that it could go around my calf and still fit around my ankle. And this is not going to be corseted, so I am going to sew this whole shin piece together, but I am going to leave a little gap at the bottom and the tops that I'm going to button together so that I can get it over my shoe. And now it's time for the foot piece. So I took a little bit of time to try and figure out what to do here. So you can see it almost looks like a sock without the heel. But I ended up having to change this design later because I couldn't get the ankle part over my shoe, so I had to make it open and then buttoned later. But you can see that I have the little strap going on underneath so that it can stay down, and then just the top layer that covers the top of my shoe. And then later I did some more crocheting for some details on the shoe. Okay, so here is what I've got going on with the little shoe bit. So after some trial and error, I first showed the regular thing on my foot, and I tried it with a shoe and it could not get on, so I had to make it so that it separates and buttons on the back here. And I've got a couple of straps here that go onto the bottom of the shoe to keep everything down, and then finally some decorations on the top here that make it look pretty cool. So after I've gotten that figured out, I can finally do the second one. Now I haven't done the second shin guard thing yet because I wanted to figure out the shoe first, so I just have to do a second one of these and then sew it together, do some decor, and then do the knee part. So I have to do all of this again, so I will catch you back when these are done. Now finally for that little knee piece, I'm just going to do a granny square in this gray and then do an outer layer of the darker gray that actually was the gray that I used for the chainmail, just to give it some definition. And then after that, we are ready for the final look. This has got to be one of the coolest things I have ever made or crocheted. This is like an actual suit of armor, except it's not super clanky and loud. Hold on, let me fix that for you. This took about 2 weeks to make and quite a lot of gray yarn. Now I think compared to the design, it turned out pretty similar to how I had drawn it. Except for a few changes, which obviously I did need to make. But still, I think it holds up to the fact that you can make almost anything out of crochet. And this is just like the tip of the iceberg compared to like other things that I've seen people crochet. It's insane. Now, one downside is that I am extremely warm inside of this. I don't think a suit of armor would be much better, but crochet is quite a warm material, so I'm pretty sweaty right now. But I think the like chainmail bit turned out really good. I think the whole boot portion has got to be one of my favorite parts of this whole ensemble. I think they just turned out really cool. It took me quite a bit of time to figure out, however. I'd say that most of the time that it took crocheting this whole thing was trying to figure out like measurements and crocheting and undoing and crocheting again to get the right thing. But once I got the pattern down, doing the other one, because I always had to make 2 of everything, went a lot faster. And I think the little like bolts that I put around here just gave it like a really nice look, so I'm really glad that I got those in. And overall, it's just, I couldn't be happier, and now I have a suit of armor finally. I think this would be such a cool thing to wear to the Ren Fair, just because like, yes, people wear suits of armor, but having like a crocheted suit of armor I think would stand out a bit, and I think that would be really cool. But I would have to choose a day where it's like not warm, or I might get a heat stroke. But I also can't go on a rainy day, because then all of this is gonna weigh like 20 pounds on me. So I really have to choose like the perfect day to go to the Ren Fair. But I think it's kind of around the corner, a few months away. I think this is going to be my next Ren Fair look, just because of how unique it is, and I feel like it's gonna get some attention. Honestly, I couldn't be happier with this look. I think I could have added just like a little bit more detail on the chest and everything, but that took a lot of time, and I just did not have that kind of time. And I do have like the little detail up here and down on the point, but it's in like a yarn that's barely noticeable, so I wish I'd done that in a bit more of a, you know, difference of a yarn, but it's already done, so I don't feel like undoing it and redoing it. And so that's what we got. You can only see it if you're like really close to me. Now I think at some point in the future I'd like to like crochet a bunch of accessories for this costume, like a crochet weapon, which I've seen people do, like a crochet sword or a mace or something, or a like little satchel bag, so that I can just put my things in it and not have to carry around my purse at the Ren Fair, and maybe like a little side water bottle holder or something to hook on the belt. But for now, this is what we have got, the base of the costume. So thank you for hanging out with me and crocheting with me. Now, I was playing around with the idea of, because while I was making all of these pieces, I did write down a very sketchy pattern of each of the pieces, but let me know if you would be interested, and maybe I will compile like what I've done into like a document or something. Now I wouldn't make it like an actual sellable pattern or like figure out the things to customize it or anything, but I would probably just write it up and just so you can see what I did, and then those of you who know how to customize a pattern yourself will be able to do that. So let me know if you're interested, and then maybe later I will post an announcement or something just with like the doc or something in it. So, anywho to do. If you like what I did, go and like, subscribe. I post most Saturdays, mostly at noon, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you for watching!